Hello, buddy. Welcome to the Redmen TV. And yeah, we are early. Not only are we early in terms of actually going live before the scheduled start, which is something within itself, but we're actually earlier than normal, genuinely time-wise, and that's because we've got other stuff going on. Anyway, hope everyone's well. A few things to get through today. Obviously, my name's Dan Club. I'll be here for half an hour or so. But yeah, got a few news stories I want to talk about, a few just general conversations we need to have. But first, you may or may not know, obviously, it's international break right now, and there's a lot of pointless games of footy going on, let's put it that way. Loads of friendlies and loads of random fixtures that people don't really care about, let's be honest. But there is quite an important one tonight in a lot of people's lives. Wales take on Poland in what is a Euro 2024 qualifier. The winner will, of course, book their place in Germany. So I wanted to ask you all a quick trivia question, and we can answer this as we go along. There's quite a few names as the answers, actually. Can you name the Welshman to score a goal for Liverpool? Obviously, there's one in particular that stands out perhaps above the rest. But I think there's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in total I've got down here. So yeah, let's see if we can name all 11 between now and like 11 o'clock this morning before I go. Sound, hope everyone's well. Yeah, what's going on? King Mo says 130 mil Madrid. I'm not hearing a cent less. I would want probably about double that, to be honest. And I get he's only got a year left in his contract. I'm going to dive into the Trent stuff in a minute, but he is so integral. He is, for all intents and purposes, a talisman of this football team. Not just the football team, but the football club. Like, this football club is ingrained within him. And to lose someone of that importance would be criminal. Absolutely criminal. Also, Stubby says he doesn't get the hype around De Zerbi at all. No, I want to touch on the manager stuff as well, and I'm with you, by the way. Sorry, Blue. It was a little bit energetic, so lively for so early in the morning. I do apologise. And you are correct, though, however. Rushy is, of course, the one I was kind of alluding to, who's got quite a few more goals than the rest. He's a start. I think that's 10 more to go. Let's see how we get on. A couple of, I reckon I would have got about 8, perhaps 9 of these, to be honest with you. But yeah, there's a couple of rogue ones in there. And there's a couple that I thought would have scored that didn't. But I won't name names just yet. Yeah, Tyrone Kenobi, absolutely. And 210 records is also correct. Joe Allen did score for the mighty Reds. Yeah, Ian Rush, Craig Bellamy, Toshak Sam, correct. I've seen somebody else mention Dean Saunders a minute ago as well. No, did not score for Liverpool. Played a lot for Liverpool, but never scored. Ian Rush and Dean Saunders, Rachel Todd, absolutely. Those two definitely did. Yeah, King Mo, ultimately, like 260 million. And it's a crazy number, of course it is. But when you've got somebody, I mentioned him a moment ago, so integral to the football club, and, he's just been named vice captain at the start of the season, and he's still so young, of course. He's got so much more to offer. He's obviously a local lad, and it would feel like a ridiculous situation to let somebody like that go, wouldn't it? It would feel crazy. And we're a football club, we pride ourselves on being, we have local lads in it, first and foremost, but also we pride ourselves on being amongst the very elite and right at the top table in world football. And if you start letting players of Trent Alexander-Arnold's ilk go to rivals, like gone are the days whereby, hopefully, whereby the likes of Luis Suarez and Philippe Coutinho would angle and force their way out of Liverpool for a move to Barcelona. Although from their perspective, you get it, because South Americans wanting to go to Barcelona isn't a huge shock. Like, every time that kind of happens with anyone, really go, well, obviously, because that's kind of how they're brought up. They view Barcelona, Real Madrid as sort of the end destination. That's their goal. But for Trent, Liverpool was his goal. And establishing himself in our team was his sort of end destination. He's done that. We should not be a stepping stone for anyone, really, but certainly not players like Trent Alexander-Arnold. So to lose him would be silly. And as I say, we're a club heading in an upwards trajectory and moving in the right direction. So to allow someone like that to go would be crazy for me. Joey Jones, correct. Yes, he did score. He is on my list. Congratulations. T. Michael, nailing it there. Ben Woodburn, Lewis Kumas, and Craig Bellamy. Lewis Kumas obviously recently added to that list. Ben Woodburn remains our youngest goal scorer, I believe. Well done. And on the Trent stuff, I'll quickly dive into the news instead of naming Welsh lads for the next 20 minutes. Yeah, so Fabrizio Romano's reported this week that he reported that Real Madrid were monitoring the situation around Trent Alexander-Arnold's contract. Obviously, he's out of contract in 2025 as things stand. There's no talks underway as of now. Liverpool have obviously not indicated any desire to sell. And he also mentions there's no sort of situation in terms of the player. He hasn't suggested whether he wants to go, whether he wants to stay. On this, the fact it says there's no talks currently underway as of now, that's not a huge shock, given that Michael Edwards has been back in the building for 2-3 weeks now, maybe. Richard Hughes is appointed, but also can't start work until the end of May, start of June. However, that isn't a great situation to be in, let's put it that way, because Liverpool, the in-tray for the incoming sporting director, which as we now know is Richard Hughes, of course, is really, really big, and there's a lot going on there. Obviously, there's a manager to sort out, there's transfers coming up and stuff like that, but perhaps more importantly than all of that, there's contract situations to be resolved with Trent, Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah, 3 of the most important players that we own, and not having a sporting directive in place to resolve them now does feel like a little bit of a misstep. I'm really happy with the appointments that we made so far. Obviously, Edwards and Richard Hughes, likewise. I'm really pleased with that. But not being able to sort them for the next month or two doesn't feel great. It's not particularly joined up thinking, and it does allow room for this type of story and this type of speculation to sort of emerge and gather pace and gain legs, which this one's kind of done, to be fair, because Romano said that the other day and he's since doubled down on it. He told the Debrief podcast that interest is concrete. And Terry Gibson, I haven't got the news story up, but I will read his quotes from this week as well. Obviously, La Liga commentator, former player himself, Terry Gibson. And he did say that Trent would be on the list of right-backs that Real Madrid want to get. And that's no great surprise, is it? He mentioned them freshen up the squad with younger players so obviously Jude Bellingham recently, Tchouaméni, Camavinga in midfield. But he did stress that the right-back situation is Danny Carvajal at the moment. That does need resolving at some point, and someone like Trent would be a really good fit. And as I mentioned, the fact that he is already into his final 18 months, fast approaching the final 12 months of his contract, to allow that to happen isn't ideal. I don't think there's any concerns. I'm going to speak to Neil Jones about this a little bit later. There's no real concerns that Trent would like to stay. And I think, when it comes to sitting down at the negotiating table and sorting out the contract, it should be quite easy to do, I would imagine, for all the points that MK makes here, really. But it's not perfect, let's put it that way. And again, I mentioned it a moment ago, you allow these types of stories to get a little bit of traction by not having him tied down to a new deal. And the same could be said for Mo Salah as well. The same could be said for Virgil van Dijk. We've seen recently when Virgil van Dijk didn't completely dismiss the possibility of him following Jurgen Klopp out the door. All of a sudden, for 48 hours, Virgil van Dijk was destined to leave the football club in a lot of people's eyes, until he then come out and shut down those rumours in a different interview and said, listen, I'm more than happy. I've just been named captain, for God's sake. I'm not going anywhere. Trent may well do the same. Of course he might. And again, I personally am not concerned over Trent's future at Liverpool. It does feel like as soon as Richard Hughes, Michael Edwards, whoever can sit down with somebody like Trent Alexander-Arnold, it will be done. It will be quite easy. It will be relatively straightforward. So it doesn't worry me. But again, I come back to it. When a club, as much as we all adore, and Liverpool is in our very soul, and there is no bigger football club in the world in our eyes, Real Madrid and the attraction of that remains a thing. We can't really avoid that. So, yeah. I'll dive into chat, see what we're saying. Antant on Salah says, be mad to sell Salah. Yeah, we would. But that situation is a bit different to Trent, obviously, in terms of age-wise, in terms of where the interest is going to come from as well. And that contract situation for Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes feels like a more complicated one. We all knew how hard his last contract, that last deal, was to get done. This one feels even trickier, because I do wonder whether FSG are going to be willing to offer him a 3-4 year contract. I'd be surprised. Maybe it's a 1 or a 2 year extension. Do they give him a wage hike on top of that as well? Yeah, it's not easy. It is not easy. Plu, I assume you'll not talk about Trent, because there is no price that makes sense. For Trent Alexander-Arnold. I said 260 million flippantly at the start of this stream, and even then, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You're losing one of your prize assets, and not just your prize asset, your future captain of the club, the man who's going to wear the shirt with pride forevermore. It feels like if there's ever, an heir to Steven Gerrard's throne in terms of being a one-club man. I know Gerrard left LA Galaxy right at the tail end of his career, but Trent should be a one-club man. Like, there's no two ways about that. He should never leave this football club. And the circumstances should never lead us to a situation whereby it's a possibility that he does. And we are edging towards that right now. If he gets into the final 12 months of his deal, if we're still sat here in August, September, and he hasn't signed a new contract, then we can really start to panic, I would say. I did see the Kyle Walker stuff, speaking about Trent. Described him as a quarterback, I think, didn't he, in the way he fizzes passes around. Charles J, don't know where you're getting your info from, mate, but I like it. Alonso is on manager, is 99% complete. I agree with you, however, Neil791. Absolutely spot on. Tom Darby, yeah, possibly. I hope so in this instance. It's not very often I say that. I'm sound, Sam. I hope you are as well. Yeah, Charles J, I completely agree with this as well. Yeah, Florian Wirtz scored of the week. It scored last week for Germany as well in like 7 seconds. Good goal too. An absolute worldie, a very, very good player, and one I would absolutely love to see at the Reds as well. Sam, I want to touch on another news story. It's obviously manager related, because as I touched on earlier, the manager situation remains no closer to being resolved. And Lewis Steele, I've spoken to before for the Daily Mail, over the weekend said that Richard Hughes is a massive fan of Roberto De Zerbi, and the manager situation took a little bit of a twist, I put it that way, over the last few days, because we've all known for a while that the admiration and the desire to bring Xabi Alonso to the club is very much at the top of the pile, but then the De Zerbi stuff remains under the radar. Ruben Amorim likewise. De Zerbi has been sort of pitched to Bayern Munich over the past few days. He's emerged as one of their favourites, which felt like good news from a Liverpool point of view. If they suddenly take the eye off Xabi Alonso and think, okay, maybe we're not going to get him, we'll focus our attention on Roberto De Zerbi. That means we don't get De Zerbi, and I'm not in love with the idea of Roberto De Zerbi, as I mentioned a few times. But then obviously the Amorim stuff feels like it's really gathered some momentum. Actually, I mentioned Lewis Steele there. There was a report from Give Me Sport last week saying that Liverpool are bigger admirers of Amorim than sort of has been spoken about. But I remain all in on Xabi Alonso. There's no two ways about that. And Ellie McDowell, I agree with you, to be honest with you. And again, I touched on the Bayern Munich thing. There's been a report from Sport Bild over the weekend saying they've already made contact with Roberto De Zerbi. And funnily enough, I was listening to Tony Barber, the Brighton CEO, I think I'm right in saying, possibly chairman, speaking about their sort of contingency plans and the way they get things in place, not just from a player's perspective, but from a managerial point of view as well, because they know when they appoint or when they sign these relatively unknown entities from different parts of the world, essentially, there will come a time whereby bigger clubs come calling and they have to go because money's too good or their ambitions can't be matched at Brighton, stuff like that. They do the same with the manager. So they're braced and they're sort of expecting Roberto De Zerbi to leave, it sounded like. Likewise with Mitoma, obviously Evan Ferguson at some point as well. So I do think there's a good chance De Zerbi moves on from Brighton this summer. I just really hope it isn't Liverpool. And putting my finger on why that is, I said this with Unai Emery last week as well, putting my finger on why that is really difficult. There's something intangible with all of these people. None of them have what Xabi Alonso has in terms of the connection with the football club, of course, but there just feels like there's something off with De Zerbi, and I can't quite tell you what it is. I think, or says Alonso staying at Leverkusen. I think I've said this a couple of times on these streams in the past few weeks, but I think don't be surprised and don't be too downbeat when almost every single line over the coming weeks, possibly even next couple of months, is about... sorry, I got completely distracted by a very positive chat there. Thank you very much, SB. Appreciate that. Nice one. That's really, really kind. Yeah, don't be surprised if all the lines coming out of Germany, Bayer Leverkusen, whoever, are sort of angling towards Xabi Alonso staying at Bayer Leverkusen, because ultimately, they're still going for the Europa League, as are we. I think we might stand in their way when it comes to that, to be honest. They are still going for the DFB Pokal, the German Cup. They're like equivalent in the FA Cup. And of course, the top of the Bundesliga, and very much on course to dethrone Bayern Munich. So I think unsettling what's going on there would be a really foolish move by anyone. So I think a lot of the noise and a lot of the talk will be Alonso's happy. I noticed their CEO last week at Bayer Leverkusen came out and said, as far as we're concerned, he's under contract until 2026. There's no way he's going to leave this summer. But in the simplest of terms, you would say that, because why rock the boat? As I mentioned, you could do a treble. Like, winning the Bundesliga for Bayer Leverkusen is unprecedented. Certainly when it comes to the might and the power of Bayern Munich, going up against them and conquering them is something that, only people like Jurgen Klopp tend to achieve, to be honest with you. So why would you even hint that this could be the end of the road for Xabi Alonso at your club. You wouldn't, would you? So, yeah, I'm not getting too sort of caught up in the managerial stuff at the moment for lots of different reasons. Some of the reasons I just mentioned there, and the fact that nobody really knows anything yet, and it's not been nailed down yet by any stretch of imagination. But also, I think the fact that what's going on in the pitch from our point of view as well, and the fact that we can still do a treble, of course. We've got the Premier League and Europa League to focus our attentions on, and we want to have and give Jurgen Klopp the best possible send-off. That feels more important right now than any managerial stuff, and I've been one of the ones speaking about it more than anyone, don't get me wrong, because it is important. But yeah, I don't think I think we're quite a long way away from anything being announced, let's put it that way. Daniel Buttery asks, what do you think of the Sporting Lisbon manager? Will he be a good fit for Liverpool? I think he would be a good fit for Liverpool, to be honest with you. I've had a couple of conversations to that effect as well. So, yeah, I think he would make a lot of sense, and I don't think it'd be a bad appointment at all. However, I still have Alonso so far clear in terms of my pecking order, it's untrue. And yeah, I spent a lot of time in some Liverpool legends company yesterday, George Scott being one, and we spoke a lot about obviously Shankly and stuff like that, and that type of situation. George Sheffrin as well, I was speaking to the voice of Anfield, of course, that came up quite a bit. So yeah, I'm even more invested in Xabi Alonso than I've ever been, but that never changes every single day. And this is kind of what I said, JD. It's similar sort of lines, and you might be right. That could well be the cut-off. Let's just say West Ham knock Xabi Alonso's Bayer Leverkusen out of the Europa League. Maybe then we hear something, because you're right, the possibility of us meeting. Because imagine we did live in a world whereby we did announce next week that Xabi Alonso is going to succeed Jurgen Klopp, and then we get them in the final or something like that. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel very right from anyone's point of view. Imagine you're a Bayer Leverkusen fan and your manager, who's currently on course to win the Bundesliga, gets announced as leaving, and then you've got to play the club he's leaving to. It's a script writer's dream, but it's not a fan's dream, a managerial dream, etc., etc. King Mo says, give Xavi a 5-year deal and sign to adjust and adapt our squad. In terms of what deal he gets, yeah, like ultimately, yeah, give him whatever contract he desires, I would say. Because I've said it a few times, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself to you, but he is so far clear in my estimations of who's the right man for this job. And I do fear that if we don't get him, he will become the greatest manager in the world in a couple of years' time. And I get the timing's not perfect, but the time for Jurgen Klopp leaving isn't perfect. Nobody expected this. Nobody could have anticipated this. So we might have to fast track Alonso into the role a little bit, I would say. But there's never an ideal time to succeed someone like Jurgen Klopp, ultimately. So, and Anne says, doesn't see Alonso doing better than Klopp. Maybe not, possibly not. Charles Jack says, De Zerbi will go to City and dominate. We could get him now. Yeah, maybe. And listen, De Zerbi's brand of football and the style that he plays and so the identity he gives his teams are really impressive. And I think he's a good football manager. There's no two ways about that. But I think in terms of like personality-wise, I know that's far from the be-all and end-all, but there is just something missing there for me. I can't quite say what that is. It's just something, I don't think he'll have the affinity with the football club that we long for, let's put it that way. We've had it with the likes of Shankly, Paisley, Kenny, obviously Joe Fagan, people like that, and Gerard Houllier, even Rafa Benitez. We had this affection, we had this real bond. Obviously Jurgen Klopp, it feels like we could recreate that and get a little bit of that with someone like Xabi Alonso. I just don't see De Zerbi getting that with us. I really don't. And I could be wrong. And listen, if I'm sat in a year's time and we're top of the league and De Zerbi's pulling off masterstroke after masterstroke and we love him and he loves us, sound. I'm here for it. But right now, I just can't envisage it personally. And I've been wrong before. This could be another wrong again. And Ryan, yeah, this is it ultimately with the stuff like Alonso. I mean, listen, I think Liverpool as a whole, as a football club, are ahead of schedule, really, when you're given how big the rebuild was. The fact we're sat where we are right now in the Premier League and stuff like that is nothing short of a miracle, to be honest. But yeah, like I say, Klopp wasn't supposed to leave yet, was he? And Alonso could have had a year in the post at Bayer Leverkusen, and we could all be even more sold on him being the right man for the job, or maybe even another 2 years thereafter. But yeah, we are ahead. And this is a really good point as well from King Mo, to be fair. And I think he did play under a who's who of football managers, and tapping into their knowledge and their expertise and having worked under them. And listen, every single person I've spoken to, I mean, I'm not, these people aren't Bible necessarily, but I've spoken to people that know him, people that played with him, people that have done interviews with him, stuff like that. And there's going to be more and more of them to come, providing this is the appointment that we make. Every single one of them when asked, says, is he the right man for the job? And it's always a yes. It just always is. And I spoke to someone from the Coach's Voice recently about it as well. That's available on Plus now, that conversation. But he was a Red. He didn't mind admitting that during the conversation. Why would you? But even at the end, I said, so your head, what's your head's answer? And it was Xabi Alonso. And then what's your heart's answer? They're the same thing, like, because he looks like a wonderful football manager and ultimately a good person and a person that understands what it means to represent this football club. And that is so important. So important. Allard van der Glessen says, you could definitely play darts. Top 3 new managers, in my opinion, Alonso, Ruben Amorim and Nagelsmann. Yeah, I spoke about Julian Nagelsmann a lot. And he looks like he's just about to turn Germany's fortunes around as well. They had a really good result over, I mentioned the Florian Wirtz goal before, he had a really good result over France on the weekend. So I think Nagelsmann's stock took a bit of an unfair hit at Bayern Munich, I think it's fair to say. I think he's a really, really impressive young football manager who his trajectory and his stock was just rising and rising and rising, wasn't it? He was 2 years ago, if we were having this discussion about who could replace Jurgen Klopp, it would be Steven Gerrard and Julian Nagelsmann. Now that shifted a little bit, but if it wasn't Alonso, and let's say it wasn't Ruben Amorim, I think I'm then immediately going to Julian Nagelsmann and saying, I know you're doing the Germany stuff right now, but any chance you come to Anfield afterwards? That'd be where I'm at anyway. Ellie McDowell, listen, I can't possibly comment on that, but yeah, he kind of is, isn't he? Not sure that helps in managerial terms whatsoever, but I guess for the press it does, and it does for like the social media interactions as well, because Rob Edwards and Luton have seen the positives in that this season. Let's put it that way. Imran says he's really worried if we don't get Xabi. I'm not worried about it. I sort of back FSG and of course Michael Edwards now to get it right, whatever road we go down. I think having him back in the building, I mentioned this last week as well when I spoke about Richie Hughes a lot, but having somebody like Michael Edwards back in the building fills me with so much confidence that almost whatever happens between now and the start of next season, I think we'll be in a good situation. I think that's a fair assessment. But also, having said all of that, there is no alternative to Xabi Alonso in my eyes. And again, come back to it, I'm not going to throw my toys out the pram and say Liverpool are doomed if we end up getting Nagelsmann, Amorim, even De Zerbi, Thomas Frank, whoever, etc., the list goes on. But yeah, I feel like Edwards, Hughes, Alonso is the perfect fit. And then thereafter, you get Trent's contract sorted, you get Salah's contract sorted, whatever that looks like. Virgil van Dijk, the same. And then you go into the transfer market and you raid Bayer Leverkusen of their best players, Florian Wirtz, Piero Nkapie, even Jeremy Frimpong. Damien is confident that Liverpool will get their man and it will be Xabi Alonso. Little Republic of Ireland flag there. No, the lads, Paul, Steve and Chris, were in Dublin last night. If you've seen the clips on social media and stuff like that, or indeed if you were there, you will know they had a wonderful, wonderful night. Arnell Jackson asked, what are the expectations if Xabi comes? I'm going to bring this up now because I'm getting shouted at. Expectations if Xabi comes are, you know what? Obviously the initial shock of losing Jurgen Klopp, or finding out we were going to lose Jurgen Klopp at the end of the season rather, was gutting, like sickening, heartbreaking. But then after about a week or so, and after a few conversations with a few different people, I did just start to come around to the thinking of, well, maybe we can get even better. And bear with me on this, because I know it sounds a bit silly. But Jurgen Klopp has instilled this belief in our fan base, in our squad, in our players, etc., that no situation is done and dusted. We've seen that Barcelona night, comeback-wise, of course, and multiple comebacks before and after that, of course, but none more so than the Barca one. So nothing is impossible now, like that never give up attitude, that mentality monsters, all that positive stuff. And a lot of it, you know, without going into tactics and sort of stuff like that, a lot of it is underdog football sometimes. Like we do, in the face of adversity, we battle harder than ever and we just find a way of winning games. There's some wonderful football mixed into that, and some world-class footballs and some brilliantly executed goals and all that sort of positive stuff. Of course there is. But a lot of it is all belief. It's all intensity. It's all, we'll run through brick walls for Jurgen Klopp. And I love that. Like, that is perfect for my football club. That's the best way of playing football in my eyes. That death by 1,000 passes that Man City tend to do, and it can be a little bit, a bit boring. However, having said all of that stuff I just said, I think having all that positive stuff from Klopp and the stuff that Klopp's given these players over the last 8-9 years, some of them more recently than others, of course, mixed in with a little bit of ball-hungry, possession-based, we're going to pass you to death, tiki-taka type of football, which someone like Alonso would bring. And Alonso's teams are exciting to watch. His Leverkusen side are a joy to watch right now, like real high-intensity, fast-paced, but they also have different ways of hurting people. I think it could actually help. Like, we could actually be better with the players that we've got right now, because we've also gone away from that dogs of war, real spirited engine room of midfield. Like, it still has that. Like, Szoboszlai runs forever, McAllister likewise, Wataru Endo, of course. But when it was, you know, your Wijnaldum, your James Milner, your Jordan Henderson, your Fabinho, all quality footballers in their own right, but it was a very workmanlike midfield at times, and just ran and ran and ran, and it gave it to the front three of Firmino, Mane, Salah, and they did the business. We have got more creation in our midfield options now, it feels like. So to have a manager who would utilise and bring the best out of that whilst harnessing all of the positives that Jurgen Klopp's going to leave us with, it's quite an exciting proposition. And I know I'm getting way ahead of myself here and talking about next season and what could be in the future, whilst we've still got a Premier League and Europa League to win this season. But I'm always a glass half full fan, and I think there is a world whereby we could even, and I think Jamie Carragher has said something similar recently, might have been to us, might have been in a public forum, forgive me either way, but he said there is a world whereby Liverpool could get better on the back of this, and that's not to undermine or to speak negatively, even think negatively about the job Jurgen Klopp has done, because he's been the best football manager I've ever seen at this football club, born in 1991, you know, for just for reference, but it's been remarkable. The journey has been like nothing I've ever seen before. But do I think it's the end of the road when Klopp goes? No, I think there is a world whereby we actually improve and we go toe-to-toe with everyone whilst also completely controlling games of football. And I've seen a few comments along the way saying, like, there is a world whereby, and somebody mentioned Klopp's style rinses players, and it does. We've seen a lot of injuries down the years, of course we have, because he does demand so much physically from his lads, and it does take a toll ultimately at the end of the day. But yeah, I think there is a potential that, as frightening a proposition as this may be, Liverpool, with the right appointments, with the right summer, with the right recruitment, etc., could actually be in a better place for it. And I never thought, if you'd have told me to start a season, Jurgen Klopp would be leaving, I never thought I could possibly sit here and say that. But Klopp is leaving us in such a healthy place. When you look at how Ferguson left United, you know, Wenger left Arsenal, etc., Klopp, it looks like he's about to leave us so well positioned to continue on this path with the squad we already have, the first team squad and the academy and all that sort of stuff. Like, we're in rude health, let's put it that way. I noticed Grizz in the chat as well. How are you, mate? Hope you're well. Speaking about the title running, yeah, massive. And I did want to touch on the fixtures and the changes. I just spent a 5-minute rant about how Liverpool could get better. Sorry about that. Yeah, the fixtures and the fixture list has took a bit of a twist over the weekend as well. Liverpool have got 3 away games on the spin in pretty quick succession as well, I think it's fair to say. But listen, the days of expecting favours or helping hands from those above in charge, or even the PGMOL for that matter, are long gone. I think Liverpool fans now are well versed in the fact that if we're going to win this, we need to very much take matters into our own hands and do it sort of against the odds, in spite of what's going against us, as opposed to with any help. I think that's a fair way of putting it. But yeah, that week feels a big one. I know, Grizz, yeah, I've seen you there, mate. I know you tweeted that feels title defining, that Fulham, Everton, West Ham week, and you may well be right. You may well be right, mate, ultimately. And I know there's loads of sort of schedule, and the fixture pile-up's a bit of a mess, to be honest with you. There's loads of sort of permutations as well about whether Arsenal and Man City reach semi-finals. Things are still going to change, maybe not necessarily for us, but certainly in the round as well. And I heard this morning, actually, and I think Arsenal, when Arsenal play Spurs will have had a break for 15 days, I think I'm right in saying. And in that time, Arsenal will have played 3 or 4 games, which is wild. And I know it's sort of par for the course, and it comes with the territory of chasing competitions and chasing trophies, but wow, that is a big disparity. That is grueling for Arsenal. I know we've got grueling times ahead as well, don't get me wrong, but compared to Tottenham having their feet up for 15 days, Arsenal having to go to the well for all that time feels big. But listen, like I said a moment ago, Liverpool are going to have to take matters into their own hands and take care of our own business. And 10 Premier League games to go. Hopefully another 5 Europa League games to go as well. hopefully 15 more games of Jurgen Klopp, so we can enjoy every last minute of it. And hopefully it all concludes with a wonderful, wonderful finale back in Dublin, so the lads can head back over to the Republic of Ireland. So I'll pop back into the chat because I was just talking there for so long. Craig Flynn, Liverpool Football Club, one of the best squads in world football. And also behind the scenes up the Reds. Yeah, there's some behind the scenes stuff to get sorted out, of course, there is still, but you're right, ultimately the foundations and the people are very much already in situ for us to continue succeeding, which is, ultimately the best possible place to be in. Ellie McDowell, they gave us another early kickoff. The jerks. I haven't heard jerks used for a long time. We do that, the early kickoff thing, you have to be spot on. I'm amazed that we're not playing early this weekend, to be honest with you, ahead of the Brighton one, because it feels like every time there is an international break, we are instantly put into the half-12 kickoff. Yeah, Rachel Todd, the West Ham is half-12, yeah. Far from ideal. We play Everton as well on the Wednesday night, and then obviously, it's just chocker, quite frankly. But I often think that Liverpool, under Jurgen Klopp in particular, are worse after a break and better with rhythm of matches. And I know there's a limit to what I'm saying there, and this might be a little bit overkill. But yeah, Everton on that Wednesday night, Charles. I think Everton and Man United are 2 games, I mentioned 10 games to go. They're the 2 games that I'm looking at really as being like crunch games. We've got Spurs, we go to Villa away as well. Not easy, far from it, but with everything riding on this final 10 games of the season, there'd be nothing those clubs and those fan bases in terms of Everton United would like more than to... We've seen what United, how they reacted to knocking us out the FA Cup last week, let alone sort of derailing our Premier League push. So yeah, we just cannot let that happen. And yeah, do you know what? It's a good point. Speaking of De Zerbi and speaking of Brighton as well, they have been somewhat of a bogey team for us in recent times, particularly last season, of course. But yeah, we do owe them 1 or 2. And again, I come back to it. There'll be no better time to sort of right the wrongs of what's happened in recent times against Brighton than this weekend, because in terms of what it means for us moving forward, starting off on a strong footing, it's literally 2 hours ahead of Man City against Arsenal as well. So it's a huge, huge game. We can't underestimate that. And listen, it's only Tuesday. We've got 5 more days to build up to this game. So I won't dive too deeply into it now in terms of starting 11s and all that sort of stuff. But it's absolutely massive. It really is. And they've been quite inconsistent of late, Brighton, to be honest with you. But it does feel like they turn up against us and have done in recent times. Even at Anfield, obviously, just Trossard stuff as well recently. Rachel Todd is attending the match on Sunday. It's a nice enjoy that. And it is a shame for Millie, in a way. Although I do hate coming up against former players of ours. The narratives around it are just sickening. Trossard isn't there now, though. It's a fair point. I mentioned his hat-trick a second ago. He's at Arsenal now, of course. And Ellie McDowell, yeah, you're right. And again, come back to it in terms of what it means for the running and the business end of the season now, which are very much in. Yeah, our squad has been boss anyway in recent weeks, let's put it that way. But having Curtis Jones back, Trent on the verge of returning, Diogo Jota likewise. I think Alisson's too far away either. Ryan Gravenberch was back on the bench ahead of the break. Ibu Konate, I think, is going to start for France tonight. Diaz has been playing for Colombia, so he's fine. And I think it's really important to mention that Salah didn't go anywhere over this international break, and likewise Darwin Núñez as well. They had a well-earned little rest. Sound? I'll quickly run through the news before I give you the answers to the trivia question before I go, because I know I forgot to do it last week. Trent Alexander, it's a hard name to say fast, that, especially when you've been speaking for half an hour. Trent Alexander-Arnold is of concrete interest to Real Madrid. It was reported over the weekend by Fabrizio Romano. They were monitoring his contract situation because he is currently out of contract in 2025. Liverpool need to get that sorted as a matter of urgency. Romano has doubled down on that and said he is a concrete target for them. As somebody said earlier on, no surprise that clubs like Real Madrid and that ilk will be looking at Trent, because why wouldn't you? He's one of the best footballers in the world. However, from our point of view, it's not even a conversation about selling him, let's be honest. We just need to nail down on keeping him. Manager-wise, Richard Hughes is a massive fan of Roberto De Zerbi, according to Lewis Steele of the Mail. And Bayern Munich have had direct contact with Roberto De Zerbi as well, which I kind of see as a bit of a positive, to be honest. Federico Chiesa has been in the news as well from a Liverpool point of view. Italian journalist Fabio Santini has said that Liverpool are among the clubs interested in Chiesa if Juventus decide to sell this summer. And would you believe Sofan Amrabat, a report from Spain, has claimed that Liverpool are closely monitoring the situation. No, thank you. And finally, according to a report from Football Insider, Liverpool owners FSG are exploring the possibility of buying Toulouse. Now, we know they are exploring possibilities of multi-club ownership and investing elsewhere. Toulouse is the first club I've seen named, obviously French league side. Yeah, interesting. Sound, trivia-wise, I won't forget, I asked you right at the start who are the players to have scored a goal for Liverpool who come from Wales. And of course, that's because of Wales' massive game tonight in their attempts to reach the Euros this summer. Not that I'm big on international footy, but it is a thing that's happening. Ian Rush, Ben Woodburn, Dean Saunders, John Toshak, Lewis Kumas, Joe Allen, Craig Bellamy, Joey Jones were all mentioned. They're probably the 8 I would have got as well, to be fair. Leighton Maxwell, Tony Rowley and Ray Lambert are the other ones I've got in front of me here. I'm hearing a couple of people mention Harry Wilson. He did not score for Liverpool. He's played a few times, but did not score. Likewise, Nico Williams. Sound, you guys are boss. Thank you very much for getting involved as ever. It's been a pleasure. I know I spoke a lot and didn't give a lot of news, but listen, it's Tuesday morning. It's international break. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? Have a good day. Take care. Speak to you soon.
Thank you so very, very much for checking out the video. If you enjoyed it, drop a like. The season is now well underway. If you need extra Redmen content, be it podcast, videos, documentaries, interviews, and general shows, fill your boots on redmenplus.com today.